Welcome back, dear viewers, and you are still watching Cairo Local Time. And in this segment of our program, we will talk about the performance of the tourism sector and expectations for the summer season. And now we are joined over the phone by Dr. Atef, PhD in Heritage and Museum Studies. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
So, sir, as I've just mentioned that the tourism sector has witnessed a great leap in the past recently and in the past months, achieving high rates. How do you evaluate this and the explanation behind this?
Well, tourism has been booming, if I can say.
Yes.
I mean, this year, as we're talking 2022 to
Yes.
2023, and the tourism flow to Egypt, exceeded or expanded than last year, same time of last year, by like 35%. And this happened because of the serious steps that the government took. Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities and the Egyptian government took lots of steps to encourage more travelers to come to Egypt. One of the things they did is they allowed people to come to the country from almost 170 countries with visas upon arrival to Egypt, so they don't have to take the visas in advance. So that encouraged lots of travelers to travel and to come to Egypt, plus all the new discoveries and the excavations that has been happening recently in different parts of the country. We're talking about Luxor, we're talking about Saqqara, we're talking about Valley of the Kings, the east and the west bank of Luxor, and so all this actually kept Egypt on the Western televisions and in the media all the time. Travelers to Egypt today want to come to do this Instagrammic tours, if I can say. So they want to go to places that nobody has been to before. They want to see new things, and they want to come and see new Egypt.
Yes.
So that increased the traveling and increased the traveling numbers of the tourists to Egypt.
Yes. Also, it is worth mentioning that the Japanese Prime Minister visited the Grand Egyptian Museum on Sunday, and it is considered a great promotion for the Grand Egyptian Museum before its inauguration. Can you tell me more about this visit, as he saw the display of the contents and holdings of the Grand Egyptian Museums, besides watching the stages of the Sun boat restoration process? To what extent this will promote for the Grand Egyptian Museum and for Egypt tourism in general?
Well, of course, the Japanese Prime Minister visited Egypt and met President of Egypt, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and also met the Prime Minister of Egypt, Dr. Mustafa Madbouli. And this visit is, of course, quite a promotion. We know that the Japanese government, the JICA, helped with building the Grand Egyptian Museum.
Yes.
And we have to mention that the idea of the museum started first in the 90s of that century. And, of course, in 2002, they put the foundation stone or the cornerstone under the umbrella of UNESCO. Hengen Peng Architects is an international company that started, the building of the museum, or if we can say the construction. And the idea of the Grand Museum is, or the shape or the design, if I can say, shows the rays of the sun coming from the museum and rising on the pyramids of Cheops and Chafran and Masserinus, the Great Pyramid of Giza. So that's the idea, or the theme of the design of the gem or the Grand Egyptian Museum. About how this visit of the Japanese Prime Minister would affect positively tourism and would promote tourism, of course it will. People are waiting to see the museum when it's open, and we know that the museum, as the Ministry of Antiquities, Tourism and Antiquities has declared, it will be opened of November, this coming November. That's supposed to be the inauguration of the museum, the opening of the Grand Museum. And people are waiting from all over the world to actually attend this opening and see the Grand Egyptian Museum. It will be by far the largest museum that accommodates Egyptian artifacts and Egyptian collection worldwide. More than 100,000 artifacts will be in the museum, of course, and it's built over an area, the total area of 300,000 square meters, and that costed almost $1 billion. So this will be the largest museum worldwide that accommodates Egyptian artifacts. People have been waiting for the opening of the Grand Egyptian Museum, and lots of the travelers, when they come here, they ask about the Grand Museum, they ask when it will be opened, and they will be displaying 5,000 pieces that belongs to King Tutankhamun's collection, 5,000 pieces, and there will be more than 13,000 new pieces that will be, displayed. It will be like a kingship museum, the way it's designed, close to the pyramids area. So I think this will increase the number of tourists, and it will increase tourism to Egypt in general.
Yes, also the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization is to establish an audio tour guide system. To what extent this will help in promoting tourism and attract more tourists?
Well, as a matter of fact, as we're speaking now, I'm talking to you from the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization.
Yes.
At the moment, so that's quite a coincidence. But anyways, of course, the audio guide system, it should be good for people who come on their own,
yes,
or people who don't have, a personal guide or a private guide, or they didn't assign a tour guide with them. So I think this will be good for this type of tourism and this type of travelers. There are some people who want to go and visit the museums on their own, and this audio guide system will provide them with information and will provide them with all the details. Also, that will happen if they don't have a guide, if they don't have a guide with them. So I think that will be good for for tourism in general.
Yes. So, sir, also if we talk about the recent excavations that are taking place now, can you tell us?
If we're talking about what?
Yes, excavations. Excavations.
I just want to add one thing about the audio guide.
Yes.
That in spite of having the audio guide, of course, as a good idea, yet I still think that the Egyptian guides are doing a great job, and I think also that the information that the Egyptian guides would give, in the museums, will make the trip unforgettable, and they bring the artifacts to life again. So that should make a difference as well. I'm not saying that the audio guide is not a good idea,
yes,
but still, I still believe that the guides, when they do the tour, when they conduct the tour and when they do the guiding, they bring the artifacts to life.
Yes. Also, sir, if we talk about the recent archaeological discoveries and the current excavations, that took place in 2023, can you elaborate on this?
Of course, 2023 was a year that was full of new discoveries and excavations. And when we talk about new discovery and a new excavation, if we talk about Saqqara, where the Step Pyramid is, they have the Bobastian necropolis that has been discovered in Saqqara by Dr. Mustafa Waziri and by the team in Saqqara. And what makes this discovery interesting and booming, as a matter of fact, is that it's totally done by Egyptian archaeologists. And by Egyptian archaeologists and by Egyptian restorers and by Egyptian specialists. So that's one of the things that should be mentioned when we talk about Saqqara. Of course, there have been lots of tombs and coffins, and the tomb of Wahdi, for instance, that was discovered in Saqqara, and now most of the tour itineraries want to include the tomb of Wahdi in the visit, and also, so there are lots of things to talk about when we talk about those new discoveries. Also, if we go south to Luxor, for instance, of course, the golden city. The golden city that was discovered by Dr. Zahi Hawass is considered to be quite a discovery. They just found the city where people were living in the past, and it dates back to almost 1400 or 1450 BC, 1400 BC. So that's the first time to discover a city where people were living. We found homes, we found bakeries, we found government offices, we found remains of tombs, relics, remains of mummies. So that will, if we talk about the Rosetta Stone as the key to the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, and if we say that through the Rosetta Stone we were able to decipher the ancient Egyptian language or the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, I have to say that the Golden City in Luxor that was discovered by Dr. Zahi Hawass deciphers how the Egyptians were living and where they were living, and I think this will make kind of a new revolution in studies because this is the first time that we found a place where they were living, and people were asking about it all the time. Also, the way the outside wall of this new city that was discovered, which is kind of kind of bent walls, or if we can say curved walls that were built from the outside. It's a self-supporter walls, and people now in different parts of the world tend to build the outside walls of their gardens or their homes the same way the Egyptians in the past did in 1400 BC or in 1350 BC. So that's another thing that was also recently discovered. On the other side of the river, on the east bank of Luxor,
yes, in
front of the Luxor Temple, Dr. Mustafa Waziri, the head of the Antiquities Department, just discovered under the area that was there in front of the Luxor Temple. So that's another Greek-Roman city. They found Greek-Roman coins. They found remains of walls and homes. So that would be another big discovery also in Luxor. So those new discoveries encourage the travelers who come to Egypt to travel and come to Egypt. People want to see new things. People want to see new Egypt. People want to see, as I was telling you a minute ago, this Instagramic tours. They want to go and see places that nobody has seen before. We always say that Egypt today is different from the fathers and the grandfathers Egypt that they visited in the past. Now again, it's new Egypt, and they want to come and see new things.
Yes, also, Dr. Amra, if we talk about Egypt's plan to revive the Holy Family Path as a mean to boost religious tourism, and now we can see that there is a plan to do that. To what extent this will help in boosting religious tourism in Egypt?
Well, of course, the Holy Family trip, imagine if you are telling or if you're promoting this trip as a place where Mary, Jesus, and Joseph, the route they took, Egypt is the second country after the homeland of Jesus, that he ate its food and he drank its water. This trip is considered to be, the trip to Egypt is considered to be the first escaping trip in history, if I can say, and the first adventurous trip in history. We're talking about 1,500 kilometers back and forth, a trip that took place in the Egyptian lands, and there are 25 stops. In other words, the Holy Family stayed in 25 places. You know, they had to move around because they were running away from the Romans at the time. So they had to move from one place to another. So at every place of those 25 stops, there is either a chapel or a monastery or a church or a tree. So this will encourage tourism. Of course, it's a new tourism, but I don't want to call it only a religious tourism. I can also call it spiritual tourism, because this way it will be a wider kind of travelers that will be targeted to when we promote this trip as a spiritual tourism or a spiritual trip or spiritual tour. So Egypt got the blessings of the Vatican already for this trip, and I think it will be booming church groups as well. And the good thing about the church groups or the pilgrimage trips is that they travel in big numbers, and imagine in the 25 stops there will be lots of services. It will increase the nights that the travelers would spend in Egypt. So this will all pour in the Egyptian economy, and will kind of boost it and encourage it.
Yes, sir. Also, one final question. As the Prime Minister has allocated 10 billion Egyptian pounds to support Egypt's tourism sector, how do you see this move by the Prime Minister? How can this money be directed to serve this vital sector in the country?
Of course, we are all read about the money that the Prime Minister, allocated for tourism in Egypt and to boost tourism in Egypt. And of course, this will help promote and help maintain and restore and help, training. There are lots of things that will be done, starting from getting a skilled staff in the hotels and on the cruise ships and in the travel agencies, guides. So in the whole formula of tourism, if I can say, so this money will be directly directed to the tourism sector, and this also reflects the care of the Prime Minister and of the government, and of course the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities about tourism, and reflects the care, of course, of the President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to tourism in Egypt. So this will also create jobs, help creating new jobs, help creating new opportunities, overcoming unemployment. So that's a very good move, of course, and of course this will be reflected directly on the sector of tourism. We know that there is more than 6-7 million Egyptians are working in the field of tourism in Egypt.
Yes, I'd like to thank you.
And there are lots of industries that are helping industries and supporting industries. So the number would go up to 10 to 15 million who are actually benefiting directly and indirectly of this tourism important section of economy in the country.
Yes, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Amr Atef, PhD in Heritage and Museum Studies. Thank you, sir, for this precious information. And the viewers, by that we come to the end of today's edition of Cairo Local Time. Thank you for watching.